Have you ever wondered how an entire subcontinent, a place teeming with riches and ancient empires, could fall under the influence of just a few European powers? Well, here's the thing. It didn't start with armies and kings. It actually started with companies. We're going to dive into how a handful of corporations kicked off one of the most high-stakes races in all of history.
So that's the big question, right? How did this happen? We're not talking about nations planting flags, at least not at first. This was all about shareholders, profit margins, and getting a massive commercial advantage. It was a corporate race for riches that would, believe it or not, end up completely redrawing the map of the world.
All right, so let's set the stage. We're talking about the Great Trading Race. For centuries, Europe was just mesmerized by the unbelievable wealth of India. Spices, textiles, you name it. Getting a piece of that action, that was the ultimate prize. And it set the scene for a commercial showdown like nothing the world had ever seen before. Now, you gotta remember, the Portuguese were kind of the old hands in this game. They'd already been in India for about 100 years before our main players even showed up. They had their trade routes, they knew the landscape, they were the incumbents, the ones everyone else was looking to beat. But, a monopoly on that kind of lucrative trade, it was never gonna last. Right around the turn of the 17th century, a whole new wave of powerful state-backed companies was born, and they were more than ready to challenge the status quo and claim their own share of the pie.
And what's so wild about this is the timing. I mean, just look at this. The English and the Dutch companies were founded just 2 years apart. This wasn't some slow burn. This was an absolute explosion onto the scene. The French, they joined the party a little later, but they came with serious royal backing, so they were a force to be reckoned with from day one.
So, you've got your players on the board. What's their first move? Well, the most critical move of all was securing a base of operations right there in India. And we're not talking about finding some office space. We're talking about claiming a strategic piece of the continent itself. And this is the key. Location was absolutely everything. A headquarters had to be a secure, fortified port. Think about it. That was their gateway for goods coming out, and for ships, supplies, and even soldiers coming in. It was their warehouse, their fortress, their command center, all rolled into one. Picking the right spot was a total make-or-break decision.
And this table right here, this lays out their strategies perfectly. Let's break it down. You can see the Portuguese, they consolidated their power on the west coast, starting in Cochin, before making Goa their long-term capital. Okay. Then you've got the Dutch. They focused on the Coromandel coast and even shifted their HQ from Pulicat to Nagapattinam as their priorities changed. But then, check out the British. Their strategy was on a whole other level. Instead of one central hub, they set up three distinct headquarters, which they called presidencies. They covered the south, the west, and the east. This wasn't just a different location, it was a completely different philosophy.
And this slide really hammers that point home. The British were playing a diversification game. By setting up major bases in Madras, Bombay, and later Calcutta, they weren't putting all their eggs in one basket. They could tap into and control multiple, totally distinct trading regions all at the same time. The Dutch, on the other hand, went for a more focused approach, one central point of power that they could, move if they needed to. Two very different corporate strategies for conquering a market.
So here's the lay of the land. The Portuguese are dug in deep on the west coast. The Dutch have their focus locked on the Coromandel coast, and the British, they've created this powerful strategic triangle, this trifecta, giving them influence that stretched across the entire subcontinent.
And just like that, the initial setup phase was over. The companies had arrived, they'd claimed their strategic bases, and the board was officially set. What came next was more than a century of intense rivalry, where simple trade disputes would blow up into full-scale military conflicts.
So this leaves us with a million-dollar question, doesn't it? When you look at these initial strategies, the focused, consolidated power of the Portuguese and the Dutch versus the sprawling, diversified network of the British, which approach do you think was built to last? The answer to that question would end up defining the future of an entire subcontinent,